After decades of working double shifts, patching together pennies, and raising Jasmine all by myself, I believed I'd finally get to rest. And when she invited me to live in her mansion, I thought it was her way of giving back. Said it was so I could relax, so I could enjoy my golden years. Instead, she handed me a mop, called me her maid to her rich friends, and tried to erase me from my own life. But the day I found my late husband's second will, hidden, unsigned, and meant only for me, I stopped serving and started planning. It all started with a smile. "Mom," she said, her voice smooth like butter over warm toast, "this house is way too big for just Victor and me. We want you here. You deserve it." I didn't question it. Not then. I wanted to believe her. Needed to, maybe. The place was stunning. Marble floors that clicked under your shoes, ceilings that seemed to stretch into the heavens, chandeliers that glittered like ice. I'd never seen anything like it. Every corner felt like it had been plucked from a lifestyle magazine. They even had one of those open-concept kitchens, all sleek counters and hidden drawers. Jasmine called it minimalist chic. I called it confusing. I could never find the spoons. At first, it felt like a dream. She poured me a glass of wine that first night. We sat in the sunroom. Victor even asked how I was sleeping. But within days, the warmth began to cool. "Can you vacuum the living room while we're out?" Jasmine asked one morning, slipping on her heels. "Of course," I said, thinking nothing of it. I was happy to help. Then came the dishes, the laundry, the yard work. Every day, there was something new. "You need to stay active," she'd say with a little smile. "Keeps the joints from stiffening up." I didn't argue. I told myself it was temporary, that she was just stressed, that maybe I'd offered too much help too soon. But deep down, a quiet unease began to grow. And then came the dinner party. I'll never forget it. Victor's colleagues, all high-powered executives and their perfectly put-together wives, poured into the house, like perfume-scented fog. I wore my best blouse, the one with the lace trim. Jasmine had told me, "Just be comfortable, Mom. Nothing too flashy." So I didn't bring my pearls. I spent the first hour pouring drinks and setting out hors d'oeuvre. Jasmine barked directions from across the room like I was one of the caterers. When I tried to sit, she waved me toward the kitchen. "Can you just keep refilling the wine?" she whispered, eyes darting toward a guest. "Some of them drink like fish." So I smiled and did it. Swallowed my pride, like I always had. Until she introduced me. I was walking back into the room, tray in hand, when I heard her laugh. That fake, high-pitched laugh she used when she was trying to charm someone. "Oh, that's Marta," she said, waving her hand toward me like I was background decor. "She's our live-in maid. I mean, technically she's my mother, but she needed somewhere to go after retirement, and I figured, why not let her earn her keep?" There was a pause. Laughter. Real laughter. I felt it like a slap. Earn. My. Keep? I stood there frozen, the tray trembling slightly in my hands. One of the women, a lady with diamond earrings the size of ice cubes, gave me a pitying smile. "She's so lucky to have you," she said. Lucky. I wanted to run, wanted to scream. But instead, I turned and walked calmly back into the kitchen, set the tray down, and wiped my eyes with the edge of my sleeve. My chest felt tight, my stomach twisted into knots. I'd spent my whole life loving that girl, working for her, sacrificing everything. And she'd reduced me to a punchline. That night, after the guests had gone and the dishes were done, I asked Jasmine if she meant what she said. If calling me a maid was just a joke. She didn't even look up from her phone. "Oh, come on, Mom. Don't be so sensitive. It was just a bit." "Feels good, doesn't it?" came Elisa's voice behind me. She stepped in with her cane, taking in the space like a seasoned appraiser. "I forgot how charming this place was," she said, her eyes skimming the staircase, the crown molding. None of that cold marble and look-at-me design Jasmine's obsessed with. This place has soul. I smiled. "You're staying in the garden unit?" "I already had the bedroom aired out," she chuckled. "Good. I'll put my orchids by the window. They'll like it here." We spent the rest of the day cleaning. Not because we had to, but because we wanted to. It's different when it's your own space. You sweep with pride. You wipe down the cabinets like you're tucking in a child. Around noon, a knock came at the door. It was Patel, holding a thick manila envelope. "All the final paperwork," he said, handing it over. "You're now the sole owner. Jasmine and Victor have no legal claim." I exhaled. The final nail in that old coffin. "Thank you," I said. He hesitated. "They've been calling. A lot, trying to figure out if there's still a way to renegotiate." Elise snorted from behind me. "They can call the moon if they want to. Won't get them any closer to it." I didn't even ask Patel what they said. I didn't care. Let them stew. Let them face the consequences of building their lives on my back, only to watch me walk away with the ground beneath them. That evening, Elise and I sat on the small back patio, sipping hot tea as the sky turned a hazy violet. The garden needed work, but even the overgrown vines looked beautiful under the twilight. "You ever think you'd end up here?" Elise asked. I looked at her. "I thought I'd die in that guest room," I said honestly, folded towels in one hand, unpaid bills in the other. She nodded, solemn. "And now?" I looked around. The quiet street, the creaky charm, the freedom humming in my chest like a forgotten song. "Now?" I said. "I'm thinking of turning this place into something more." Her eyes lit with curiosity. "Like what?" I took a sip of tea. "A wellness home," I said softly. "For women like me. Mothers, widows, caregivers. Women who gave until they were empty and got nothing back. A place to rest, to heal, to start again." Elise smiled wide, her wrinkles deepening. "Now that's a damn fine idea." I smiled too, but my heart twisted. Because as free as I felt, there was still grief. For the years lost. For the daughter I once knew. For the woman I used to be. So willing to serve. So desperate to be loved. I would mourn her. But I wouldn't go back to being her. That night I slept in the master bedroom of my own home. The sheets were fresh. The mattress firm. And for the first time in a long time, the silence wasn't cold or hollow. It was peaceful. It was mine. And just before I drifted off, I whispered one final promise into the dark. Never again will I let someone treat me like less than who I am. It didn't even take a full week. Just 5 days after I'd left their house, after I'd claimed my place and laid the first stone for my new life, Jasmine came knocking. Not metaphorically. Literally. I was in the garden unit with Elise, discussing which flowers to replant in the overgrown beds, when I heard it. That frantic pounding on the front door. Elise looked at me over the rim of her coffee mug. "They're early," she said dryly. I didn't answer. Just stood slowly, wiped the dirt from my hands, and walked to the door. Sure enough, there she was, Jasmine. Not polished, not posed, but a frazzled mess, hair in a hurried ponytail, eyes red, breath coming fast, like she'd run up the steps without thinking. "Mama," she gasped. She hadn't called me that in years. "Jasmine," I said coolly, "you're at my door." She looked around, as if trying to gather herself. "Can we talk? Please?" I didn't step aside. "Victor with you?" Her face twisted. "No, he's handling things at home." "Ah," I said. "And what things might those be?" She hesitated, then pulled out her phone, opened her banking app and held it up like some kind of confession. "We're in trouble." I raised an eyebrow. She lowered the screen. "Victor made a few bad calls," she said, voice trembling. "One of the investment groups pulled out. We're over-leveraged. The bank might freeze some of our assets." I crossed my arms. "And the brownstone was supposed to save you." She didn't deny it. "I didn't know it was this bad," she said softly. "I thought Victor had it under control." I tilted my head. "That's funny. You never had a problem telling me what to do. But now, suddenly, you're just a bystander?" Her lips trembled. "I made mistakes. I let things get to my head. I didn't realize how far I'd pushed you." I looked at her. Looked through her. This woman standing here was not my daughter. Not the little girl who used to beg me to braid her hair before school. Not the teenager who used to fall asleep next to me on the couch after late-night study sessions. This was a woman built on manipulation, pride, and privilege. And now that the money had run out, she remembered her mother. "What do you want, Jasmine?" She hesitated again. Then she looked me straight in the eyes. "I want to come home." Those words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Thick, bitter. "I've always been home," I said quietly. "You're the one who left." She swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." "No, you're desperate," I said. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't flinch. "I have nothing," she whispered. "You have exactly what you built for yourself," I replied. "A life of appearances, of control, of taking, and never giving." She shook her head, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Please, just let me stay. Just for a few nights. Just until we figure out what to do." I stepped forward slowly and looked her dead in the eye. "You made me feel like a burden in your home," I said. "You treated me like I was disposable. I wiped your floors, cooked your meals, and bit my tongue while you paraded me as your live-in help." I paused. "And now you want to crawl into my house and pretend nothing happened?" "Mama," she whispered, voice cracking. "I am not your maid," I said, my voice low and steady. "I am not your backup plan. And I am not your solution." Behind me, Elise appeared in the hallway, arms crossed, gaze sharp. Jasmine looked between us, desperate. "Please," she whispered. I took one breath, and then I shut the door. Softly, cleanly, without guilt. Later that night, Elise poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to me. "That must have felt good." I nodded. "It did. But it hurt too, didn't it?" she said gently. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Because yes, it did hurt. Even after everything, there was still a part of me that hoped. That maybe Jasmine would see the light. That maybe she'd fall to her knees. Not in desperation, but in true remorse. But now I knew better. Some people don't change when they hit bottom. They just try to drag others down with them. I didn't hear from Jasmine for 3 days after I shut that door. Not a text. Not a call. Not a second knock. But I could feel her desperation humming beneath the surface, like a kettle just before it whistles. I knew my silence would sting more than anything I could have said. And sure enough, on day 4, it came. Not from Jasmine, but from Victor. He showed up in a sleek black sedan, the kind that looked like it was leased on borrowed time. I spotted him from the upstairs window as he stepped out onto the sidewalk, straightening his collar like he was heading into a boardroom, not begging at the feet of the woman he once called an expense. I opened the door before he could knock. "Victor," I said coolly. He gave me a tight, forced smile. "Marta, here to pick up your wife's dignity?" He chuckled, but his eyes didn't smile. "I'm here to talk. I bet." I stepped aside, only because I wanted to hear what nonsense he was about to spill. And because Elise had a hidden recorder on the hallway console, her idea, of course, Victor stepped inside and looked around. "Nice place, cozy." "It's mine," I said simply. He walked into the living room, perched on the edge of the couch like he was preparing for a deposition. "So," he started, lacing his fingers together, "Jasmine told me what happened. About the brownstone. The inheritance." I folded my arms. I'm sure she had a colorful version of it. He leaned forward slightly. "Look, I'll be straight with you. We're in a tight spot. We lost our liquidity line after one of our silent investors pulled out. Jasmine didn't know. I didn't tell her. I didn't want her to worry." I raised an eyebrow. "How noble." He ignored the jab. "I made some risky plays. Not illegal, just aggressive. They didn't pan out. Now we're stuck with over $1 million in short-term obligations and no cash. So you need me," I said bluntly. He hesitated, then nodded. I smiled, slow and cold. "You told me to earn my keep. Remember that?" He flinched. "That was unkind. I apologize. You kicked your wife's mother to the curb," I said. "Called me dependent. Said I was lucky to live under your roof." He looked down. "I was wrong. No, I said. You were arrogant. And now you're broke. You want me to fix it. He opened his mouth, then shut it. I walked to the console, picked up a thick envelope, and dropped it on the coffee table in front of him. He stared at it. What's this? An offer, I said, but not the one you're hoping for. He picked it up, pulled out the paperwork, eyes scanning quickly, his brows knit in confusion. It's a repayment contract? That's right, I said. Every expense I covered, every bill I paid, every dime I put toward your wedding, your mortgage, your business dinners, all itemized, all backed by receipts. He looked stunned. This is over $200,000. Correct, I said. If you'd like a loan from me now, you'll need to repay what you already owe. Victor stood abruptly. You've got to be kidding. I stepped closer, my voice calm but cutting. I'm not your maid. I'm not your ATM. I'm the woman who kept you afloat for years while you pretended you were the king of the castle. His jaw clenched. Now, I continued, you can leave that paperwork here and walk out with your pride. Or you can sign it, and I'll consider a second conversation. He didn't move. Elise would love to see your signature, I added. We've got a file going, just in case this all ends up in court. He grabbed the envelope, shoved it back inside, and stormed toward the door. At the threshold, he turned back. You think you're above us now? No, I said softly. I always was. I just forgot for a while. And then, I shut the door in his face, just like I did to Jasmine. That evening, Elise came into the kitchen, carrying her tablet. You seen this? She held it up. There on the screen was Jasmine's latest social media post. Her smiling in an obviously staged photo with the caption, Grateful for the small things. Learning to appreciate simplicity and family again. #healing. #new beginnings. I nearly choked on my tea. Elise snorted. She's rebranding. To what? I asked. Manipulative monk? She's trying to save face, Elise said. People must be asking why she's not posting from the mansion. I leaned back in my chair. Let her spin whatever story she wants. She can't fake integrity forever. Elise looked at me, her voice softer now. You doing okay? I nodded. Sometimes it feels lonely, I admitted. But it's a good kind of lonely, the kind that means no one's using you. Elise raised her glass. To solitude. And to women who remember their worth, I said, clinking mine against hers. By the following week, I traded in my apron for something far more satisfying, blueprints. Yes, real blueprints. Spread across the long kitchen table, held down with ceramic mugs and half-burned candles. Elise stood beside me, cane in one hand, reading glasses perched low on her nose. Look at you, she murmured. Marta the maid turned Martha the mogul. I smirked. Not a mogul, just a woman who's finally putting herself first. I was converting the brownstone into what I dreamed about for years, but never dared to say out loud. A wellness home for women like me. Caregivers, mothers, grandmothers, women who'd been taken for granted or tossed aside the moment they stopped giving. Each floor would serve a purpose. The garden unit would become a communal kitchen and lounge, warm, inviting, filled with houseplants and mismatched mugs. The main floor, therapy and activity rooms, art, movement, quiet reflection, and upstairs, rooms for short-term stays, a place for someone to come rest, no expectations. Rest. A word I never really understood until now. I was thinking, I said, tracing my finger along a line on the blueprint. We name it after Daniel. Elise looked over, her voice suddenly gentle. He'd like that. I nodded, my throat catching a little. He'd always said I had a healer's heart, that one day I'd build something that didn't just shelter people, but restored them. This was it. Not for profit. Not for show. But for me. For women like me. Of course, word got around. It always does. The first email came from a woman named Lucinda, early 60s, recently widowed, caring for her granddaughter alone. She'd read about the project in a community newsletter Elise had proudly sent to everyone at her church. I don't need therapy, Lucinda wrote, but I need someone to listen. I need a room to cry in and a reason to smile again. I called her myself. That same night, I sat at the garden table with Elise, rereading the email. These women, I whispered. They've all got battle scars. Elise poured more wine. So do we. I glanced at her. Think I'm crazy for trying to do this? She leaned back, her gaze firm. Marta, you scrubbed toilets and smiled through insults for a woman who treated you like luggage with a pulse. You cooked gourmet meals for a man who wouldn't even clear his own plate. Now you want to create a space for women who've been ignored, used, and forgotten? She raised her glass. I say it's about damn time. The next day I went to the local city office to register the project. Had my binder of paperwork, floor plans, budgets, even the licensing fees all organized and color-coded. The clerk, a young man with shaggy hair and kind eyes, flipped through my file. This all looks great, he said. You're serious about this? I nodded. Dead serious. Name of the center? I paused, then smiled. The second room. He blinked. That's unique. It's the room women are never given, I said. After the children grow. After the marriage ends. After the world forgets them. It's the room they deserve. He stared for a second, then slowly nodded. I'll fast-track this, he said. This matters. That night, I stood at the top floor of the brownstone, looking out the window. Lights flickered in neighboring buildings. Someone was playing soft jazz 2 doors down. The air was crisp, but not cold. It felt like possibility. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like someone's backup plan. I wasn't waiting to be needed. I was building something because I wanted to. No Jasmine. No Victor. No begging for scraps of love or respect. Just me. Marta. Mother. Widow. Fighter. Founder. The story could have ended there. A quiet triumph. A new purpose. A home filled with women healing, resting, and rediscovering themselves. But Jasmine? She wasn't going to let go that easily. She never could stand the idea of someone else, especially me, having the spotlight. It started with a text. 1 word. Really? I didn't reply. Then came the email. Subject line. So this is what you've been doing? A whole paragraph of thinly veiled accusations. I hear you've started some kind of charity. I just think it's a little tone-deaf to flaunt a wellness home when your own family is falling apart. Maybe your energy would be better spent helping your daughter. But clearly, some people love playing the martyr. I didn't reply to that either. Because I was done. I had learned a hard truth. You can't explain your growth to people committed to misunderstanding it. But Jasmine wasn't just angry. She was embarrassed. Word about the second room was spreading fast. Elise's church bulletin had turned into a local news piece. A young reporter, curious and kind, came by to interview me. I wasn't seeking attention. But when someone asks about a cause that matters, you don't stay silent. I spoke from the heart. About what it means to be discarded. About how many women give and give until there's nothing left. Jasmine must have seen the segment. Because the next morning, she showed up. Again, I was just stepping out onto the porch, watering the window boxes, when a silver SUV screeched to a halt at the curb. She jumped out, heels clicking across the sidewalk, sunglasses on even though the sun hadn't broken through the clouds. Marta, she barked. I turned. Slowly. Elise's not here, I said, if that's what you're after. I'm not here for Elise, she snapped, pushing the glasses up into her hair. I'm here for you. I set the watering can down. Well, that makes one of us. She walked right up to the bottom step. You're making me look bad. I'm not making you anything, I replied. You're doing a fine job all by yourself, she flushed. You're in the paper. You're on TV. You're acting like you're some kind of savior. No, I said calmly. I'm acting like a woman who finally stopped letting people treat her like furniture. Her voice rose. You're using our name, our story. You're exploiting our family drama just to make yourself look like a hero. I leaned on the railing. Interesting. Because when I was scrubbing your toilet and sleeping in a windowless room, you had no problem calling me a live-in help. But now that I've found my voice, now I'm a threat. She looked like she wanted to scream. Instead, she pulled out her phone. You know people talk, right? Do you think anyone will donate to your precious little house once they find out how you abandoned your daughter when she needed you? I smiled, slow and wide. You should be very careful, Jasmine. Her eyes narrowed. Because every word coming out of your mouth right now, it's slander. And I've got 2 lawyers and a dozen witnesses who've heard the way you treated me for over a year. One more stunt like this, and I'll make sure you're the one answering questions. She blinked. That's when she saw Lucinda, our first guest at the second room, watching from the front window. And behind her, Marisol, a teacher in her 60s, holding a basket of fresh-baked muffins she'd made for the house. Both of them strong. Both of them watching Jasmine unravel. The embarrassment hit her like a slap. Her mouth opened, closed. Then she turned, stormed back to her SUV, and drove off like the tires were on fire. I picked up the watering can again. Lucinda opened the door behind me. You all right? I nodded. That was just the ghost of who I used to be. She smiled. Well, you look taller than her. Later that evening, Elise and I stood in the doorway of the top floor guest room. This one's ready, I said, flipping the light switch. Feels like it's been waiting for someone, Elise murmured. I nodded. They'll be here tomorrow. Widow, early 70s. Her kids haven't visited in 6 years. Elise ran her hand along the clean windowsill. You think Jasmine will try again? Maybe, I said. But she won't win. Elise looked at me, proud and a little misty-eyed. You sure you're not a savior? I smiled. No, I'm just a mother who finally came home. It was a Thursday afternoon when the letter arrived. Cream-colored envelope. Expensive paper. My name written in heavy, swirling ink. From Jasmine. I stood in the hallway of the second room, the laughter of women echoing from the kitchen below. Elise was helping Marisol lead a cooking class. Her latest obsession was healing through homemade bread. There was life here now. Warmth. Purpose. But that envelope in my hands? It pulsed like something alive. I opened it slowly. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. Mom, I suppose I don't have the right to call you that anymore, but it's the only word that still fits the ache in my chest. I watched your interview. I read the article. And for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I felt ashamed. I sank into the chair in the upstairs hallway, the afternoon light pooling around me. I was cruel. I was entitled. And the worst part is, I knew it. Deep down, I knew I was using you, that you were the backbone of our family. But it was easier to treat you like a fixture than admit how much I owed you. Victor and I are over. He packed a bag and left after investors threatened legal action. The house? It's on the market. I'm staying in a rental near downtown, ironically not far from your center. I walk past your block sometimes. I look up at your windows and wonder if you can feel how proud Daniel would be. I stopped reading for a moment, closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and kept going. I'm not asking to come back. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. I see it now. The sacrifices, the quiet, the strength. I see it, and I'm sorry. If I ever become half the woman you are, that would be enough. There was no signature. Just one final line. You taught me what it means to love. I just wish I'd learned before I lost you. I sat there for a long time, holding the letter in my lap. My heart didn't leap. It didn't shatter. It simply settled. Some wounds don't close, but they do stop bleeding, and some apologies, while late, are still worth hearing. That weekend, I gathered the women of the second room, in the common room. Lucinda brought her crocheting. Marisol passed out slices of lemon cake. Elise settled into her favorite chair with her cane leaning beside her, eyes twinkling. I stood at the center, holding a fresh sheet of paper. I have an idea, I said. Something I want us to build together. They looked up. It's called the Wall of Names. A simple wooden panel hung on the east wall, blank for now. But it wouldn't stay that way. We each write one name, I continued. One woman in our life who gave us strength, even if she didn't get recognition. Maybe a mother, a grandmother, a teacher, or even ourselves. Elise was the first to nod. Lucinda stood slowly, walked over, and pinned up the name Gloria. Her sister, she said, raised 3 kids alone while battling lupus. Marisol wrote me, with a smile that said everything. When it was my turn, I walked to the board with a quiet heart and wrote, Marta, because after all the years of waiting for someone else to see me, I finally saw myself. That night, I stepped out onto the porch. The lights from the brownstone glowed soft behind me. Down the block, a pair of teens on skateboards zipped past, laughing. I looked up at the sky. Daniel, I whispered, we did it. This home, this second chance, this circle of women lifting each other up, it was everything we dreamed of and more. And as I stood there, the wind brushing my hair like an old friend, I knew I hadn't just found peace. I had built it. You're always helping around the house. What's the difference? I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came out. Not because I didn't have them, but because something in me had gone quiet. Cold. That was the night the dream cracked, and I realized I wasn't a guest in my daughter's home. I was the help. But she had no idea what I was truly capable of. Not yet. The morning after that dinner party, I sat alone at the far end of the breakfast bar, nursing a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. Jasmine breezed in wearing silk pajamas and a satisfied little smirk, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. Victor followed, grunting a half-hearted greeting, clearly hungover, clearly uninterested. He didn't even glance in my direction. And why would he? To him, I was already invisible. Background noise. Marta, could you grab us some juice? Jasmine asked, plopping onto a bar stool. Fresh orange, if there's any left. I stood up slowly, careful not to show the ache in my knees. I moved to the fridge like a ghost, my body moving but my mind somewhere far away. They hadn't just humiliated me. They'd redefined me. And the worst part? They thought I'd accept it. They thought I'd serve with a smile. Later that day, Jasmine knocked on my bedroom door, not to apologize, but to hand me a printed list. Just a few things to help keep the house running, she said with a fake cheery tone, like she was giving me a grocery coupon, not a full-blown chore schedule. You know, so you feel useful. The list was long. Laundry on Mondays and Thursdays. Dusting every window ledge. Grocery shopping twice a week with her special list. No store-brand anything. Dog walking, though it wasn't even my dog. Even their dry cleaning had made it onto the list. I stared at that paper in my hand, my eyes burning, but I said nothing. Not then. What was I going to say? No? And risk being tossed out? I'd worked too long, saved too little. I had nowhere else to go. And she knew that. That's why she thought she had me. She had replaced compassion with condescension, rebranded cruelty as care. I know you're retired, Jasmine had said sweetly that afternoon, but a little structure keeps the brain sharp. The brain sharp. I'd run an entire household on a single salary, paid off debts, put her through college. And now she talked to me like I was one missed step from slipping into dementia. But I smiled, nodded, took the list. I played along. For now. That night, I went to bed early, retreating to the guest room, the maid's quarters, as Jasmine had once joked when Victor's cousin came to stay. It had no windows. Just a small bed pushed against the wall, a dresser with a broken knob, and a standing lamp that flickered when you turned it on too fast. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the beige wallpaper, and I made a promise to myself. This would not be how my story ends. The next few weeks followed the same pattern. Jasmine played hostess to her country club friends, and I made myself scarce, vacuuming during their tea parties, ironing Victor's ridiculous silk button-downs, being careful not to speak unless spoken to. Victor, for his part, barely acknowledged my existence. Occasionally, he'd grunt something that vaguely resembled thanks when I dropped off his dry cleaning, but more often than not, he acted like I was furniture. Once, he actually walked past me in the hallway and said, "Excuse me," like I was in the way. But one person in that house saw through it all. Grandma, Elise, Victor's grandmother. Now she was a woman not to be underestimated. She lived in the east wing of the house, kept mostly to herself but sharp as ever. 83, and not an ounce of foolishness in her. The kind of woman who didn't say much, but when she did, you listened. I first met her in the kitchen one early morning. I was making tea, quietly, carefully, when I felt eyes on me. I turned, and there she was, sitting at the kitchen island in her robe, hands folded, expression unreadable. "You do all the cooking?" she asked. I nodded. "All the cleaning too?" Another nod. She raised an eyebrow. "And they don't pay you?" I gave her a weak smile. "I live here. HMPH." She sipped her tea. "So do I. Doesn't mean I polish Victor's shoes." And that was the beginning of something. She didn't speak much at first. Just watched. Watched Jasmine bark orders. Watched Victor slink through the house with that self-important air. Watched me swallow insult after insult. One afternoon, after Jasmine had snapped at me for using the wrong hand towels in the guest bathroom, I caught Elise staring from the staircase landing. Our eyes met. She didn't say a word, just gave me this long, knowing look. And I knew. She saw it all. Later that week, she pulled me into her sitting room, closed the door, poured 2 cups of tea. "You're not just their maid, are you?" I didn't answer. My throat clenched too tight. Elise leaned in, her voice low, almost conspiratorial. "I've been watching them, Marta, and I don't like what I see, especially not from Jasmine." I blinked, surprised. "She's your granddaughter-in-law," she scoffed. "She's a spoiled brat, with a diamond ring and no soul." I almost laughed. Almost. She leaned back in her chair and stared at me like she was sizing me up. "Tell me something. What did your husband leave behind when he passed?" The question hit me like a gust of cold air. My husband Daniel had passed just over 2 years ago. The grief had dulled, but never disappeared. "Not much," I said, folding my hands in my lap. "Some savings. A few investments. He left most of the paperwork with Jasmine's accountant." Elise narrowed her eyes. "Her accountant? Not yours?" I nodded slowly. She stood, walked over to a drawer in her cabinet, pulled something out. A file. "I think you better look at this," she said. And in that moment, I had no idea. But what I was about to read would turn the entire game on its head. I took the file from Elise's hands, my fingers trembling just slightly. The cover was a little dusty, cream-colored, with one of those old plastic tabs that had my husband's name, Daniel Alvarez, typed inside. "You might want to sit down before you open it," Elise said. So I did. I lowered myself into the chair across from her, heart hammering in my chest. The weight of the past 2 years pressed down on me, thick and heavy. Daniel's death hadn't just left me widowed, it had left me drifting. All the paperwork, the estate matters, the endless calls and signatures. Jasmine had told me not to worry, told me she'd handle it, that it was too much for someone so emotional. Back then I was too raw to question it. I flipped open the file. Right on top was a familiar document. The official will. Or so I thought. The one I'd signed in the lawyer's office with Jasmine sitting right beside me. I recognized my signature, the notary's stamp, even the date. But underneath it was a second will. Notarized, stamped, unsigned. My eyes flicked up to Elise. "What is this?" "It's the version your husband drafted 6 weeks after the one you signed," she said, her tone measured. "He never got to file it, but he left it here. With me." I blinked. "Why you?" she shrugged, sipping her tea like this was any ordinary Tuesday. "He didn't trust Jasmine. And, frankly, neither do I." My fingers flew through the pages. Daniel's intentions in the second were clear as day. While the first version had listed Jasmine as co-executor alongside me and left a modest inheritance to her, the second version cut her out entirely. Instead, it transferred full rights to a rental property downtown. One I hadn't even known was still in our name. A 3-story brownstone, fully paid off, with tenants currently paying below market rent. Jasmine had always said it had been sold, that the proceeds had gone toward Victor's new tech startup as part of some long-term family wealth strategy. Lies. My throat went dry. This place is worth a fortune. "At least $2 million, Elise said. "Maybe more, especially in that neighborhood." My hand pressed against my chest. That's when Elise reached across the table, and placed her wrinkled hand over mine. "You've been lied to, Marta. Manipulated. Humiliated." Her eyes burned with a fire I hadn't seen in years. "But now you have something they didn't count on." I looked up at her. "Leverage," she said. The word sat heavy in the room, thick with possibility. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in that tiny guest room, maid's quarters, and stared at the ceiling. My mind racing through every moment Jasmine had dismissed me, every chore she'd piled on, like I was her employee, every smug smirk, every dig wrapped in a sugary tone. But this was different. For the first time since Daniel died, I didn't feel powerless. I felt the faint spark of something old. Something that had once lived deep in my bones before all the years of sacrifice and silence dulled it down. Rage. And something else too. Resolve. By morning, I had already called Lawyer Patel, the quiet family attorney Daniel had always trusted. A kind man. Soft-spoken, but sharp behind his glasses. We met at a little cafe, tucked into the corner of a tree-lined street. I slid the unsigned will across the table, barely able to meet his eyes. "I didn't know this existed until yesterday," I said. Patel took his time, reading it line by line, his brow furrowed in concentration. After what felt like hours, he finally looked up. "This," he said, tapping the top of the document, "this is still legally valid, if you choose to file it." I blinked. "Even unsigned?" He nodded. "Under state law, if the document is dated, notarized, and accompanied by credible witnesses, such as a lease, in this case, it can be considered a valid expression of intent, especially if we can prove Jasmine manipulated the process around the first will." My stomach twisted, a mix of fury and relief. "So you're saying I can reclaim that property?" "I'm saying," he replied, "we can expose exactly what she tried to hide." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "But you have to be careful, Marta. People like Jasmine, they don't like losing. She'll fight dirty." I smiled then. The first real smile in weeks. "She already has," I said softly. When I got back to the mansion that afternoon, Jasmine was in the garden, laughing into her phone, probably arranging another overpriced social event. Victor was nowhere in sight, probably hiding in his office like he always did. They had no idea the tide was about to turn. I walked past her, silent, calm. She barely noticed me, just waved her manicured fingers like I was a shadow. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I held the match, and the house of cards they'd built around me. It was about to burn. I spent the next few days doing what I did best, observing, quietly, carefully. Let Jasmine believe I was still the same docile woman who folded her towels and scrubbed her baseboards. Let Victor think I was just a shadow, slipping in and out of rooms with fresh coffee and warm food. Let them both relax. Because once people let their guard down, that's when they show you who they really are. And oh, they did. Jasmine must have assumed the humiliation of the dinner party had been forgotten. She paraded around like a queen, her voice louder, her demands sharper. Suddenly, the list of chores turned into full schedules. Monday was deep cleaning. Tuesday was grocery restocking. Wednesday was for pressing Victor's shirts. By hand, no starch. Just how he liked them. And on Thursday morning, while I was kneeling in the hallway dusting the baseboards, yes, on my hands and knees, Jasmine sauntered by in her silk robe, holding a green smoothie she didn't even sip. "You missed a spot," she said, not even looking down at me. I paused, looked up at her. "I'll get it," I said softly. She smirked, then walked away. But it wasn't just the chores that changed. It was the tone, the way she spoke to me. Like I wasn't even a person anymore, just a fixture in her fancy house. Something to be ordered around and blamed when things weren't perfect. That night, she hosted another little gathering. Smaller this time, just her book club friends, though I doubt any of them had actually cracked a spine on a novel in years. "Mother's here too," she said with a little laugh as they sat around sipping wine and nibbling on imported cheeses. "She keeps herself busy around the house. Says she likes to feel useful." The way she said it, feel useful, like I was some broken-down antique being dusted off for display. I stood by the kitchen island, invisible. One of the women leaned in, her voice syrupy sweet. That's so generous of you, Jasmine. So many parents just fade away after retirement. At least she has purpose. Fade away? I was still standing right there. My blood boiled, but I bit my tongue. Again. Later that evening, I caught Victor in the living room, sitting with his feet up on the coffee table I'd just polished. He was scrolling through his phone, chuckling at something. "Victor," I said, keeping my tone light, "do you mind not putting your shoes up there? I just cleaned." He didn't even look at me. "That's your job, isn't it?" I stood there, stunned, the rag still in my hand. He finally glanced up. "Don't take it so personally, Marta. You're here rent-free. Least you can do is keep things tidy. Rent-free." As if every breath I took under that roof was some kind of burden. They had rewritten the story in their heads completely. I wasn't Marta, the mother who had raised Jasmine single-handedly after Daniel passed, who worked 60-hour weeks to make sure her daughter went to the best schools, who skipped meals so that Jasmine never had to skip a dance recital or a doctor's visit. No. I was now Marta the freeloader. Marta the maid. Marta the charity case. But the thing about being underestimated, it gives you time, space, a chance to plan. So that's what I did. I met with Lawyer Patel again 2 days later, this time in his office. He handed me a folder. "I've filed the claim," he said. "The probate court will review the will within the next few weeks. Once it's accepted, you'll have full legal rights to the downtown property." I nodded. My heart pounded. He tapped a second sheet of paper. "And I've prepared this affidavit detailing your financial contributions over the years in case Jasmine attempts to challenge your share of the estate." I smiled thinly. Let her try. But it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about pride, dignity, justice. I walked out of that office taller than I had in years, and just in time too. Because when I got back to the house that evening, something had shifted. Jasmine was waiting at the kitchen table, arms crossed, a strange look on her face. "Mom," she said, "we need to talk." I played dumb. "Of course, sweetheart. What is it?" She gestured to a document on the table. I picked it up. A power of attorney form. "Victor thinks it would be a good idea to have you sign this," she said, her voice lilting sweetly, too sweet. "Just in case anything happens. You know, medical emergencies, finances. It's really just a formality." I stared at the paper, then back at her. "You want access to my accounts?" I asked. Jasmine laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Mom, you hardly have anything to worry about. It's not like you're sitting on a treasure." I folded the paper in half. "No," I said. She blinked. "Excuse me?" I said no. Her face twitched. That pretty little smile cracked just a little. "Mom, are you feeling all right? You've been under a lot of stress. Maybe you're confused." "I'm not confused," I said. "Not anymore." I walked past her and up the stairs, leaving her stunned in the kitchen. Let her wonder. Let her squirm. Because soon the truth would hit her like a freight train. From the moment I refused to sign that power of attorney, Jasmine changed. Oh, she still wore that same polished smile, still offered me tea in the morning like everything was fine, but her eyes told a different story. Cold, calculating, suspicious. She was watching me now, not just glancing. Watching, tracking my every move. If I went out, she asked where I'd been. If I took a phone call, she hovered a little too close. Once, I caught her rifling through my drawer under the excuse of looking for the spare keys. And Victor? He had turned silent. He used to mutter snide remarks, toss his coffee mug into the sink for me to clean. Now he barely spoke at all. His eyes darted away every time I entered the room, like he knew something was coming and wanted no part in it. I kept up the act. Cooked dinner, folded linens, even polished the silverware. Let them think I'd caved. Let them believe I was back in my place. But the truth? I was digging. See, the thing about people like Jasmine and Victor, they're not careful when they believe they've already won. And in that arrogance, I found cracks. Small ones at first. Receipts tucked between magazines for high-end furniture that didn't match anything in the house. Emails left open on the home computer referencing, quote, consultation fees from accounts I didn't recognize. And then one night, while cleaning the upstairs hallway, I overheard something I wasn't supposed to. Victor was on the phone, his office door slightly ajar. "No, listen," he hissed. "The downtown place isn't on the books yet. It was supposed to be sold under her name before she— Yeah, but Marta's dragging her feet. I don't care if the market's hot, we need that cash to cover the quarterly payout. Just push Patel. He'll fold." I froze. The downtown place. They knew. They'd known about that second will, long before I did, and they had a plan for it. The next morning, I stepped into the study before anyone else was awake. Jasmine had left her laptop open, as usual, too lazy to shut it down properly. I hesitated for a moment, then sat. Her email was still up. And right there, in her inbox, was a chain of correspondence with Victor's financial advisor. Subject line: Estimated valuation, Marta's brownstone. My stomach twisted as I clicked. They'd appraised the property without my knowledge, already had a buyer lined up. A quiet transfer was the term used. And Jasmine? She'd replied with a single line: "We'll get her to sign, one way or another." I stared at the screen, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt, so this was the game. Use me, milk my labor, humiliate me. And when that wasn't enough, trick me into handing over the last thing Daniel left behind. They thought they had time, they thought they had control. They were wrong. Later that evening, I decided to test the waters. Jasmine was sitting in the sunroom with a glass of wine, scrolling through photos on her phone, probably editing selfies to post under her lifestyle blogger account, the one where she pretended her life was built on hard work and clean eating. I stepped in, slow, calm. "Jasmine?" I said gently. She looked up, suspicious. "Yes?" I sat across from her, folded my hands. "I've been thinking about the downtown property." Her eyes flickered. She hid the reaction quickly, but I saw it. That glint. That flash of greed. "Oh," she said, trying to sound casual. "I didn't realize you were still interested in that little place. It's not in the best condition anymore, is it?" "I suppose not," I said slowly, "but I've grown attached to it. You know, the memories." She sipped her wine. "I understand. But Mom, you should really let go of those things. Daniel wouldn't want you clinging to the past." I smiled faintly. "You're probably right." She leaned forward, voice softening. "What if we sell it and use the money to renovate the guest house here? You could finally have your own space. Something cozy with privacy. Doesn't that sound nice?" I laughed softly. "You're always thinking of me." Her eyes lit up. She thought I was folding. "I'll talk to Victor," she said brightly. "We'll get everything started. You don't have to worry about a thing." I stood up, smoothed my sweater. "Oh, I'm not worried." She tilted her head. No, I said, turning to leave. "Because I've already spoken to Lawyer Patel. And the paperwork is being finalized. That little property you wanted so badly?" I glanced back at her, just in time to see her face pale. "It's mine. Legally, fully, irrevocably." The wine glass trembled in her hand. I walked away without waiting for her reply. For the first time since moving into that house, I felt free. I still had a long road ahead, but the leash was off. And Jasmine? She was the one about to feel the choke. I knew the storm was coming. Jasmine wasn't the type to take humiliation lying down. She'd take a hit, but she'd strike back twice as hard. And I was ready for it. The house was quiet the next morning, unusually so. No clacking heels down the hallway, no blender whirring with her kale and collagen breakfast. Just stillness, the kind that makes the hairs on the back of your neck rise. I made myself a cup of tea and waited. Sure enough, just after 10 she emerged. Sunglasses on indoors, a too-wide smile stretched across her face. "Mom," she chirped. "Victor and I would like to have a little chat." In the dining room. Ah, there it was. I set my mug down, nodded slowly, and followed her. Victor was already seated at the head of the table, arms folded, face hard. Not the goofy tech bro act he usually wore. This was business Victor. The man who handled acquisitions, silenced competitors, and treated negotiations like war zones. And me? I was the next deal he wanted to crush. Jasmine gestured for me to sit. I did, calm, still, letting them think they had the upper hand. Marta, Victor started. We understand you've been speaking with Patel about some changes to your late husband's estate. I gave a small nod. That's correct. And while we understand your desire to protect what's yours, Jasmine jumped in, her voice tight, this could potentially create tension. Within the family. Family, I echoed, letting the word linger. Is that what we are? Jasmine bristled, but Victor pushed ahead. The downtown property was part of a long-term investment strategy, one we were counting on. If we can't liquidate those assets, it puts strain on multiple commitments. I tilted my head. You mean the ones you made without telling me? Victor's jaw flexed. We're not here to fight, Jasmine said quickly. We just want a solution that works for everyone. I folded my hands. I already have a solution. I keep what's mine. You two stop treating me like a housemaid. Jasmine gave a thin laugh. Oh, come on, Mom. No one treats you like a maid. I raised my eyebrow. Really? Then why do I have a chore list posted on the fridge like I'm 15 again? Victor rolled his eyes. That's not the point. Look, we can't afford to have this go public. It looks bad for us. Investors, business partners, they pay attention to these things. A family dispute could kill a deal. There it was. The real fear. Reputation. I leaned forward slightly. Then maybe you should have thought about that before trying to trick me into signing a power of attorney. Jasmine's face snapped tight. We were trying to help you. No, I said, my voice calm but firm. You were trying to take the last thing Daniel left me. And when that didn't work, you tried to control me with guilt, with favors, with humiliation. Victor tried to speak, but I cut him off. You both forget I built a life before this house. I raised Jasmine while working 2 jobs. I paid the mortgage on our first home with nothing but elbow grease and rice dinners. Daniel and I fought tooth and nail for every dollar, every brick of that brownstone. And you think I'm going to hand it over to 2 people who see me as a glorified live-in? Silence. You could have heard the air conditioning kick on. Then Jasmine, with her voice soft and saccharine, said, I just don't want to see you make a mistake, Mom. That place is old. It needs work. We could help you manage it. Bring in better renters. Make it actually profitable. I smiled. A slow, knowing smile. You mean like how you helped with Dad's will? She didn't respond. I stood. This conversation is over. I'll be moving out in a few days. Jasmine's head snapped up. What? Where will you go? I turned to her, cool and steady. To my property. My home. Victor scoffed. You really think you can live on your own at your age? You've been dependent on us for months. I leaned in just slightly. That's the funny thing about people like you, Victor. You mistake kindness for dependence, and quiet for weakness. His mouth opened, but no words came out. I walked to the hallway, but paused at the doorway, glanced over my shoulder. Oh, and one more thing, I added. I've spoken to Elise. She's coming to dinner Sunday. The color drained from Jasmine's face, and she has some things to say about how this house is being run. I didn't wait for a response, because the wheels were already in motion, and nothing was going to stop what came next. Sunday came with a strange stillness, a sort of expectant hush, like the moment just before thunder breaks. The house was spotless, too spotless. Jasmine had been scrubbing and straightening for hours, snapping at the cleaning crew she finally agreed to hire last minute, after weeks of treating me like one. Victor was in a sour mood, pacing, phone glued to his ear. I caught the words damage control more than once. And me? I sat in the sunroom, sipping peppermint tea. Calm. Composed. They had no idea what was coming. At exactly 6 p.m., the doorbell rang. Jasmine looked up from adjusting the dining table centerpiece, her smile pasted on like a mask. Mom, could you? I'll get it, I said, already walking to the door. When I opened it, there stood Grandma Elise, wrapped in her navy shawl, her cane tapping gently on the porch. Her eyes twinkled behind square glasses, but there was a sharpness to her smile, a quiet satisfaction that only comes from watching a plan unfold exactly as intended. I leaned in, kissed her cheek. "You look lovely," she smirked. "Let's go rattle some cages." Victor straightened up the second he saw her. "Grandma Elise, what a surprise!" She waved a hand. "Don't bother with the act, Victor. I'm not here for small talk." He blinked, thrown off, then forced a tight chuckle. "Of course. Let's sit." We all gathered around the table. Jasmine had laid out her finest dishes: charcuterie board, champagne flutes, even those linen napkins she only brought out for influencers. Everything was perfect. Except the people. We'd barely gotten through appetizers when Elise put her fork down and turned to Jasmine. "So," she said crisply, "Marta tells me you've been quite the hostess." Jasmine gave a sweet smile. "Oh, it's been lovely having her here. I always say, nothing beats a house full of family." Elise raised an eyebrow. "Is that what you call it? I've heard a different story." Victor tried to interrupt. "Grandma, we've all had a few misunderstandings." She cut him off with a look sharp enough to freeze boiling water. "I'm not here to coddle either of you," she said. "I have lived long enough to see exactly what this is. Two overgrown children, using a woman's kindness like a doormat." Jasmine's face flushed, her smile faltering. "That's not fair, isn't it?" Elise leaned in. "Tell me, Jasmine, did you think I wouldn't find out about the power of attorney? The hidden appraisal on the downtown property? Or the fact that you've been telling your friends Marta's your maid?" Dead silence. Jasmine opened her mouth, then shut it. Victor looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Elise turned to me. "And yet you stayed. You endured all of it. Why?" I met her eyes. "Because I needed to see them for who they really were, without the mask. And now, I have." Elise nodded, slow and proud. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a small manila envelope, slid it across the table. Victor eyed it like it was a bomb. "What's that?" he asked. "Final proof of ownership," Elise said. "The updated legal documents Patel filed this week. That brownstone? Fully transferred to Marta. Officially and legally." Jasmine's hand darted toward the envelope, but Elise slapped her palm over it first. She warned. "Touch that, and I will have your fingers broken." Victor stood, face red. "This is outrageous. You're siding with her?" "She's your mother," Elise said coolly. "The woman who raised Jasmine alone, who gave more than either of you ever deserved. And you repay her with humiliation and theft? You're lucky I don't call in my own lawyers and destroy both of you." Jasmine looked stunned. Truly stunned. Like she'd never been spoken to like that in her entire adult life. And then, she laughed. A bitter, high-pitched, unraveling sound. "You know what? Fine," she snapped, pushing her chair back. "Take your precious house. Take all of it. But don't come crawling back when the roof leaks or the tenants stop paying rent. Let's see how far dignity gets you without our support." I stood slowly. "You never supported me," I said softly. "You tolerated me when it served you." I reached into my purse, pulled out my envelope, dropped it next to Elise's. "What's that?" Victor asked warily. "My resignation," I said, "from this farce of a family, and a copy of the notice to vacate. I'm leaving this house tomorrow morning. For good." Jasmine's mouth dropped open. "You're kicking yourself out?" I smiled. "No, I'm choosing freedom." Elise stood too. She looped her arm through mine. "And I'll be staying at the brownstone with her for a while," she added casually. "I always did like city life." Victor looked like someone had smacked him with a briefcase. I turned to them both one last time. "You should be careful who you think is powerless," I said. "Sometimes the quiet ones are just waiting for you to show your true colors." Then Elise and I walked out, our footsteps echoing down the hallway of a house that had never felt like home. But tomorrow? Tomorrow, I'd finally be going home. The sun was barely up when I pulled into the driveway of the downtown brownstone. For a moment, I just sat there in the car, watching the soft golden light stretch across the quiet street. A few dog walkers passed by. A jogger. The occasional chirp of morning birds. It was peaceful. For the first time in years, I wasn't waking up in someone else's space, bound by obligation or expectation. I wasn't walking on eggshells, waiting for Jasmine to snap about towels or Victor to toss me another silent insult with his morning coffee. No, this place was mine. I stepped out of the car with a slow breath, the keys in my hand feeling heavier than gold, each one pressed with the quiet weight of memory. Daniel and I bought this place in our early 40s, back when we were still wide-eyed enough to dream of passive income and early retirement. It had tenants back then, too. A young couple with a newborn in the top unit, an elderly man who liked to garden on the back patio. We'd intended to retire here someday. And then, life happened. Jasmine happened. The sacrifices stacked up, and somehow, this little sanctuary became forgotten. Until now. I slid the key into the lock. It turned smoothly, like it had been waiting. The front door creaked open into a modest hallway with wood floors, worn in the best kind of way. The scent of old pine and paint filled my nose. Someone had recently refinished the walls. I took that as a sign. A clean slate.